Welcome to the Safe Life family. We're the Safety Guys. I'm Landon.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're excited you're joining us on the journey from Safety 101 to Safety Experts. Welcome back, everyone. We're happy to have you back on the show.
Sure is.
One of the most challenging groups of individuals to try and teach safety principles have a streak of independence and definitely don't want to be told what to do. Any idea on who that group is?
Disneyland characters.
Well, pretty close. It's actually teenagers. So I think
like something in common sometimes.
Absolutely. And when it comes to helping teenagers start thinking of safety ideas or ways to be safer, one of the best ways of doing that is through questions. And these questions can't just be necessarily off the cuff, but there's a few principles that are helpful to remember in that.
Yeah, I believe when you ask a teenager a question, believe it or not, many of them don't feel like they're being heard. And this is an opportunity for them to talk and a good opportunity for moms and dads or grandmas and grandpas to listen. But I think you got to have a captive audience. If there's too much going on and too much in their lives, they're going to say, look, can I go now after you ask a couple or getting to know them a little bit? And there's some remarkable questions out there that you could talk for hours. But I think it's important to have that wherever it's at, to have nothing to interrupt your conversation, or especially for you to listen after you ask the question.
And in today's world, that's a really tough thing to do.
It is
not only a lot of things happening outside of the home, but also devices, whether it be computers, gaming systems, handheld computers, right? Every one of us have those cell phones. All of those can be a huge distraction when it comes to these connections or these questions.
Yep. And I got an idea. I'm just going to pass on. Maybe I've thought about this a lot here, just as time goes on and this technology becomes more and more important to them. But have you ever thought of having a tech-free zone in your home? What I'm going to suggest, in your car. And the reason why is that there's been a lot of teenage deaths in our country over the last years, and texting and driving or trying to communicate. And teenagers love to communicate through their devices to one another. But it would be, I think, maybe the number one safest thing you could do for your family if you started when they were small, or even tried to educate them when they're older, the importance of what it's like to be in control of a car and possibly have your friends' lives with them. Could you imagine you're on a bus and the bus driver's texting?
Oof.
And you're the parent and your child's with them. So there's a lot of things to think about of the safety thing, and put in place when they're young. Say, okay, we promise in our family, want to do a contract or whatever, just getting used to that habit that we do not have technology going on in the car. And this even means when they're in the teenagers in the back seat, and all of a sudden you get a phone call and it's your boss. What are you going to do? If you pick up and that 12-year-old in the back seat sees mom or dad pick up or text, you just threw the family rule out the window. You got to live by that example and be really adamant to say that. And then also, when you get to that point where you're sending them off, there's nothing wrong with reminding them. I don't know if you remember all the things I did when you guys went out on dates. I would.
There's a checklist I found correctly.
Kindly remind you of our family rules and how to get you back home, safe. And I know that the teenagers now, they're going to get into their best friend, and their best friend's going to be texting. You got to cover that and figure something out so that maybe they can save everybody's life and say, hey, can we just throw away this? And let me ask you some questions. Let me find out a little bit about my friend that I'm riding with. But anyway, it is one of the most critical things that you can do, I think, in a family. And you have a tech-free zone. And that's where it is. It's in your vehicle when you travel. And it's only going to help when those kids get older and even become parents themselves, because I don't think things are going to get, well, maybe they will get better. Something might be created that you don't have to be distracted when you drive. Maybe these cars that drive for us will get to the point that they're so good that and then you can just, who cares what you're doing in the car? I don't know.
Maybe. But having that example on a consistent basis is important. And as parents, we have to be that example. And even with our younger children, it would be a huge, uh, little children are really good at reminding you of every single thing that you say. So, right? Hey, kids, if you see this happen, and I'm sure that my littles would definitely say, Dad, you did it again. Technology free zone. What, how do we help everyone understand the impact that really that's going to have by just not having a cell phone happening in the car?
Well, I'll bet you in all of your communities, you're going to have a tragedy with a teenager and a crash. And hopefully, all the communities are getting wiser on this. And during the investigation, they'll pull the phone and find out, what was the last time that they did communicate or whatever they're doing in talking to somebody or listening to something. And those stats will start to go out. It's really interesting going on the internet right now. And we invite you to find out how many. I just went on the National Highway Traffic Safety one, and they said this was in 2019, but 434 died as a result of crashes that involved cell phone use. But some of the estimates in some of the other organizations is up to 3,500, and almost 70% of them were teenagers.
Wow.
So you can see where they love to communicate that way, and driving and go to classes. You can go on the internet. You can punch up a video. There's lots of really touching videos. It's based on true stories that you could watch as a family as you're trying to incorporate the rules and laws of having this zone that's free from any kind of electronics. There was 1.6 million crashes that was somehow involved cell phone use to distract. There was 390,000 injuries in our country on that too. And like I said, it's when that ding goes off on a teenager, I don't know, it's like a free candy bar for teenagers that are hungry. They just, for some reason, it's just boom. And you're going to have to cover that a little bit with them too. And you can watch even yourself, watch your spouse or whatever. It happens. They just will stop whatever they're doing and they have to look. It's that important. It's a crisis. It's a drug. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's fun for me to watch people when those dings happen of how critical it is for them. Now, if you're an emergency person or a doctor, you need to, I get that. But for normal people like you and I, it's not that critical. You can pull over. I got a good friend. Name is Dave. And first time I noticed it, he was pulled offside the road and I stopped to help him because I know who he is. And he's like, well, what are you stopping for, Kevin? I says, you need help? He goes, no, I just got a phone call. And every time he gets one, he's a pretty important man. And he just pulls over and he takes, and then he answers or he calls him right back. So I just have a lot of respect for people like that understand how important it is.
And I can understand what happens, right? I mean, you've heard the story of Pavlov's dogs and the bell came with the treat. Well,
Yes.
sadly, there's some times where that bell comes off and I say, oh, someone needs some help. So I can definitely understand that. Huge impact when it comes to, I mean, what, 1.6 million crashes per year?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't want that to be your children.
Absolutely not.
Or your parent. I mean, it just doesn't, it can, we could really do something and it'd be a huge blessing for your family to be able to ask some questions that you just get to know each other so much better and it becomes fun and you're talking. The social skills is another one of my issues with teenagers, and it develops social skills for them. It's just such a win-win situation all the way around.
Absolutely. And if you think back, we also talked about how to be aware. If the focus is no longer the phone, then the awareness can go to what's around the vehicle, what's coming up, what's happening. And I think that principle of, asking questions, have that being the focus, also helps in another way. Teenagers are also not always known for making the best decisions. I guess I wasn't the best decision maker when I was a teenager. You might have been different, but from the stories you tell me, that we may be similar.
Yeah.
Um, but part of that just comes with development. There's a reason why there are certain things that are accessible to adults and not accessible to anyone underage. Our brains are developing, right? And human brains, that's a natural thing that happens. And there's a little trick you can do that will uh, help your teenager have a better opportunity for making the right decisions. What's that trick?
I don't know.
It's questions. It's
Yeah.
questions.
I was gonna say sugar, bribery, money.
Those are different things that may help.
Um,
But those questions, how would asking a question maybe before, I know you did this on a regular basis with us, whether it be what are you where are you going, what are you doing, what time might you be home, and we were able to go do things, absolutely, but I needed to report back. But what are some other questions, and how does that help us as we're developing our minds?
well, it makes you think, and you got to have some rules on that too. There's no, I don't know. That doesn't go. I don't want to answer it. These are questions that are so much fun. Like, well, if you had a superpower, I'll just give you one example. What superpower would you want? Maybe they've never even been asked something that's fun, and then they get to think, and that whole brain thing starts to turn on, and then the answer might surprise you. You know, what if you could turn into an animal tonight for one night? You know, those, and you'd be surprised. Ask grandkids that. It's the funniest thing in the whole wide world. And then you say, well, why would you want to be a beetle bug? And they'll tell you. It's just a really fun opportunity to bring your family closer and your relationships closer as parents, and especially in teenagers. I think it's kind of a natural process for them to want to be out on their own, because hopefully eventually they will be out on their own, and they're just testing the waters and seeing how to do it all. So I was fine with it. I knew what was coming, and every time there was, a little bit more pushback, I'm like, yeah, they're preparing me to just say, go and experience this wonderful world.
Be a grown up.
Yeah.
I think I think we've got a few things down. So, vehicle technology free zone. If you need to pull over, right, in those emergencies, great opportunity. You don't necessarily, unless you're on the interstate, it's pretty easy to pull over. And even then,
You
right,
can.
you definitely can still pull over. So, technology free zone in the car, asking questions is a great way to go about making sure that your young driver, your old driver, or anywhere in between maintains a safer environment. But that's pretty easy when you're apart, right? You're going on a road trip, everybody's together. It's pretty easy to have that be the example. But any ideas or any tips or tricks? How do you help them have those thoughts when you're not there?
I don't know. Because I know you kids, and when I was away from my parents with all of our good rules, even some of the rules that I didn't understand as a teenager, you just have to try to, I think, remind them when they leave on to go out if you can. If somebody's there that's the grown up that says, please remember to have the free zones, pay attention, whatever the thing is, return home with honor. There's just a lot of things you have to remind them when they go. You might even, when they see all these examples that you set for them, it will be powerful. I promise you it's powerful. But if you wanted to go a little bit further, you could say, okay, when you get into the car, your phone has to go into, the little side compartment next to you, or the what we call the glove box, or you have to just turn it off. You can do that in your family and say, these are the steps that we require for you to have the privilege to drive. And it's just the way it has to be done when they're young. You can't, this is really going to be hard if you let your kids do all this texting and now they're getting their license. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but oh, it's so worth it if they come home every night.
Absolutely. And as a part of that, teenagers figuring out how to do things, before they leave, it's okay to ask a few questions. Maybe a thought-provoking question of, what's going to happen if your friend wants to text and drive? What do you do?
Mhm.
And yes, you may get an eye roll from that question, especially, Dad, Mom, I'm trying to leave right now, but that will spark that development and helps make better decisions later on.
I don't know if you remember me. I don't. You might not have heard me. You guys have had a little bit different talk, but when the young men were coming to pick up my daughters, I'd invite them in, and I would ask them if they knew anybody with a brand new vehicle. Didn't matter what it was. Around here, there's a lot of really nice trucks, and they would mention somebody. Oh yeah, that's my neighbor down the street. He has a brand new, whatever model, make and model. And I says, well, I want you tonight to go and ask him to drive that. Can you just do that for me? And they'd always have that deer in the headlight look saying,
Quite a random
what?
question.
And then they're like, that's his brand new car. Why? I don't know this. I don't understand. And I said, my daughter is worth 100 plus of those brand new trucks. And I'm actually going to let her go with you tonight. So you have to make some commitments to me that she'll come home safe, that there's not going to be any crazy driving. The phone does no texting.
Yeah.
And of course, then I did cover the speed because there was a couple of young men that had cars that went way too fast. And I made them commit to it. And all but one actually did everything that we committed to. But
Awesome.
that was the last time he dated my daughter, the one that broke the rules, because I wasn't going to put up with it. I was kind of strict that way. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, what you're talking about, Landon.
Absolutely. And a few other questions, right? If you're in a pinch, maybe a random one. What are you going to do if it snows tonight? Yes, that's going to be an odd question. You may get an odd answer, but they'll think of that, and that's almost putting on the safety thinking cap. We might want to rebrand that one, but many opportunities to keep your family safe. So in summary, technology-free zones, good questions can really go a long way to develop your safety life.
Can we put questions on them that they can download somehow?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know you can go to the internet and find a billion really fun ones, but we'll put some of our favorites down to however this thing works.
Yeah, check out the description. We'll have them posted there.
That's the key word.
But thank you. Have a great, safe week.
Bye-bye.
If you feel like we helped guide you in your journey to a safer life or home,
or if you just think we're awesome,
please follow us for more. After all, who doesn't like a thumbs up or a subscribe? And for you who have stayed the extra mile.
Oh, crud, you're going to do this.
Absolutely, I'm going to do this to you. We wasn't prepared. We like to give a few extra nuggets, whether that be additional advice or maybe even just good life advice. So, safety guy, what's your minute today?
Speaking of teenagers, I think you choose your battles. I got to tell you a quick story about a gentleman that was fighting with his daughter continually. And his big thing was she would wear different colors of socks or different weird shirts with pants. Nothing ever mixed.
Sounds like my daughter.
A little. Well, she was with those sandals in the wintertime all the time. But what I finally said is I said, recognize her for those things. I mean, there's nothing that she's doing wrong. Okay, it's a fashion crime, but it doesn't even count. And so I asked him to, when she walks out the door, I want him to just say, man, look at those two different socks. You might start a new fashion thing across the country. This might be the most popular thing. And then let her go to school. Well, what ended up happening is she became more, I guess you could say, conservative. And she started wearing the same color of socks because the dad was complimenting her on her great. I think she just wanted a little bit of a rise in pops before she went to school. But choose your battles. You don't have, some of them, yeah, you're going to have to battle with the things, but support them with everything else, and life's a lot easier and kinder.
Great relationship building technique. If there's 5 positive interactions for every 1 potentially negative interactions, that relationship's going to be a lot stronger. So
yes.
Well, Be safe out there.
Yep. See you later.